Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Thursday morning, July the 7th. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes, and it's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. If the chat room is open, I just put the chat room up, and if anybody would like to sit in there, that's great. And I'm going to pop the link into there to Robert Burney's webpage. It's called Joy to Me and You, and that's www.joy2meu.com. And we're looking at the next portion of on his site index called doing grief work. So that's what we'll be looking at today, see what he has to say about that. And I just appreciate everybody being here. I'm not a counselor or a therapist, and I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows here. And so, you have to listen at your own discretion to all of my shows, I'm talking about abuse, and abuse is a very sensitive subject, and many people may find it makes them uncomfortable. Survivors may find that it can trigger you, so you need to be able to, you need to be sure what you're listening to and whether or not it will bother you. And if you think that the topics of abuse or anything related to child abuse or domestic violence or sexual abuse or anything like that would bother you, then you need to not listen to my shows, right? Because I'm just telling it like it is, and I just, I'm not sugarcoating it, minimizing it, or anything else. I'm just being as honest as I possibly can be. So, I have no idea how young the people are who are listening to my shows. So if you're under the age of 18, you need permission to listen to my shows. And I want you to, have a parent. Hopefully you have a parent who cares. I know how it is to not have, to be in a situation like that. But hopefully you have someone in your life who cares about what you're doing and who's older, who's an adult, and who can help you make a decision whether you should be listening to my shows, right? And that would, you need to learn how to protect yourself online. And a lot of my shows have a lot of adult content on them, and that's why I asked that, because ultimately it's about stopping child abuse and child abuse issues and whatnot. But, there's a lot of adult content on my shows. So young people under the age of 18, have somebody listen to the show with you and make sure it's age appropriately okay for you, right? And so we'll get right into this. This is Robert Burney's webpage. It's Joy to Me and You, www.joy2meu.com/grief.htm. And that's what we're looking at today. Robert Burney is a spiritual teacher. He's a codependence counselor or therapist. He's a grief counselor. He's a spiritual teacher. He's an author. He's written a book called Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. And he's got some good information here. And some of it I relate to, some of it I don't. Some of it, makes sense to me, and some of it I'm still, I don't agree with it or whatever. But it's just good to look at it. He does some of the stuff that he has there I totally relate to and can see where he's coming from. And he's a survivor, so some of it I totally relate to, and then some of it I don't. So not all of it's going to make sense to all of us, and not all of it's going to be, what we're not going to agree with all of it, and that's fine. But I want take a look at this stuff, because I'm always looking for stuff, especially related to codependence and codependence behaviors, and I'm working on my inner child right now, so inner child healing. So that's how I stumbled across his website, and so we've been on his website for probably 2 months or more, and we'll eventually be moving on here. But I did want to cover a few things, and this is the part of the inner child healing pages that he has. It's called Grief Process Techniques: The Path to Love and Forgiveness. And so I'm just going to read from his page here, and you can pull that up. The link is in the chat room there. Or did I put the link in the chat room? I think I did. Yes, I did. So you can follow along if you'd like, and I'm just going to be reading from his web pages and see what I can see here that's helpful for me. So Grief Process Techniques: The Path to Love and Forgiveness. He says, we are all carrying around repressed pain, terror, shame, and rage energy from our childhoods. Whether it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago, we have this grief energy within us, even if we came from a relatively healthy family, because society is emotionally dishonest and dysfunctional. This is what he says. These are excerpts from his book, Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. And he says, grieving is a very different experience from being depressed. While we are grieving, we can still appreciate a beautiful sunset, or be happy to see a friend, or be grateful to be sad. Depression is being in a dark tunnel where there are no beautiful sunsets. So he says, our mental health system not only does not promote healing, it actually blocks the process. The mental health system in this country is designed to get your behavior and emotions under control so that you can fit back into the dysfunctional system. And he says, drugs that are designed to disconnect you from your feelings block the healing process. Mental health professionals who need to have you see them regularly in order to be financially supported need to have you be dependent upon them need to keep you a patient in order to survive. So that's kind of interesting. That's Robert Berney's view on the whole thing. He's a codependent therapist, and so obviously he's out there in the mental health field, in the profession, and so he must know a lot more than I do. I don't know if all of that's really true or not, but this is just what he says. But I've heard other people say it, and other people who have not read Robert Berney's pages. So it's kind of something that people do talk about. It's not something that I know anything about because I've never had anything to do with the mental health field or the mental health profession or been involved as a patient in the mental health system. And so for me, I don't no idea myself personally. I've never I wouldn't be able to even comment on that because I have no idea. But that's what people say. I've heard it from many other people. It's unfortunate, you know what I mean, because the mental health system, really should be about getting people well and healthy and whole if they can, you know what I mean, and doing the best job that they can to help that person do that themselves so that they can stay whole and remain whole. And I think that, recovery from anything is all about, the person involved, the patient has to be 100% committed to it, and they have to be 100% involved. And they're at the end of the road. Of course, you do want to be able to be well. So to keep somebody a patient is not a good idea. I mean, it's like recovering from any kind of surgery. The ultimate goal is to heal, so that you can get back to work, so that you can do things. You don't want to keep somebody with a wound who and keep opening it up so that they won't be able to heal. So I don't know. I find this disparaging, this comment that he has here, and I don't know if I agree with it, but there probably are people out there like that, because there's every type of person on this planet. There's every type of evil on this planet, and so I wouldn't doubt that there are some people doing that. And I wouldn't doubt that this doesn't happen because there's evil people in every sector of our society. So, I mean, he may not be far off there, you know what I mean? He may be actually very accurate about a lot of it. But I don't know, because I don't know anything about the mental health profession. I wouldn't discourage people if a person wanted to see a counselor or therapist. I myself rather do self-help. I really don't trust counselors and therapists, and I don't trust other people. If I trust somebody, it's because they've proven themselves trustworthy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just going to go walk in and trust anybody with myself. You know what I mean? I've already been wounded and hurt and damaged and screwed right up, so I really don't want anybody else having the opportunity to do that. And as an adult, it's my choice. You know what I mean? Like, I it's my choice to keep myself safe, and so I choose to do all of my stuff self-help. But I did make a commitment to myself, 4 years ago when I started my healing journey, that if I couldn't do self-help and it wasn't working for me, and all I was doing was spiraling downhill and things were just potentially getting worse for me, that I would seek a counselor or a therapist or something. So, the option is always there, and I like to keep that as an option. And I know lots of people who have gone to therapy and counseling and have said that it was quite successful for them. So, everybody's different, and you might run into some good therapists and good counselors out there. I've talked to a few that actually seem pretty cool to me. So, I don't know. But it, just like everything else, there's good parents on this earth and there's bad parents. There's people that abuse children. There's good people that don't abuse children. There's probably people that abuse mental health patients, and then there's other people that take good care of mental health patients and want to see them well. So there's every illness and evil in our society, obviously, right? So, I guess part of what he's saying makes sense to me. So we'll get right into this grief process techniques. And he says we each have, and every one of us had or has an inner channel to truth, an inner channel to the Great Spirit. But that inner channel is blocked up with repressed emotional energy and with twisted, distorted attitudes and false beliefs. We can intellectually throw out false beliefs. We can intellectually remember and embrace the truth of oneness and the light and love. But we cannot integrate spiritual truths into our day-to-day human existence in a way which allows us to substantially change the dysfunctional behavior patterns that we had to adopt to survive until we deal with our emotional wounds, until we deal with the subconscious emotional programming from our childhoods. And I guess that's just it, Excuse me, we've spent, I myself have spent so many years, feeling a certain way, with certain belief systems, with certain attitudes and certain ways of looking at things. And all because they were coping mechanisms for me to survive as a child in that environment. And a lot of it was put upon me, a lot of my beliefs that were what my family believed, and a lot of my stuff is what came from that. You know what I mean? So it's just the environment that I grew up in. And so, if I'm not willing to kind of get in there and see the truth of things and look for that, then chances are I'm just going to continue on in those behaviors. And so, it's I like what he has to say. Changing. So in other words, allows us to substantially change the dysfunctional behavior patterns that we had to adopt to survive until we deal with our emotional wounds. So, that's just it. Like, I'm taking a look at what I know that I can change, and along the road, kind of hope that I will hopefully see some more stuff that I may be doing that is kind of self-sabotaging or whatnot. That I could work on as far as behavioral issues and different things like that. So, hopefully at the end of the road, we want to be whole, we want to be well, right? He says we cannot learn to love without honoring our rage. That's kind of interesting. We cannot learn to love without honoring our rage. That's interesting. I know I had a lot of rage, and so I went through about, maybe 6 months or a year ago. It might have been a year ago now. I can't quite remember now, but I was doing a whole lot of looking into anger and anger management and rage, shame, the rage-shame connection, toxic shame and rage and whatnot. And there is some great information out there for people who are looking, and tons and tons of stuff. It's kind of, rage was just something that I needed to have within me. You know what I mean? I don't know why. I didn't like it. And the thing is I thought it was killing me, and it was so hard and so harsh on my inner spiritual, and my inner self, like, to carry around that rage and that hatred and that anger. So 4 years ago, when I started my healing journey, that stuff started getting pushed out, and what started to come in was love and light and truth. So, I don't know. I don't think I honored my rage. I don't know. I think what it was is I just allowed myself to feel differently about things, because the rage was going to kill me. I was literally thinking, if I ever let this rage out, I'd have to go out into the middle of a field or something, in the middle of nowhere, and just scream and pound the earth and just throw a fit and let this rage out, and rip and claw at the dirt or something, and so it wouldn't hurt somebody or myself. And I thought, would I ever be able to come back from that? And that would have been all the pent up rage from just all the abuse that was put on me for so many years. And the sexual abuse and the physical violence, the physical abuse, the mental torture, the verbal assaults, the rejection. It was, I thought, oh my God, would I ever really be able to come back from that if I actually let that out like that? So I decided to do it a different way. And what I did was just opened up my heart to receive love. And as I was doing that, the rage and all that started to kind of go away. I noticed the difference. I was like, wow, I don't feel like my inner child is raging so much. But that's because I got in touch with myself. My inner child. This is really the first time that I had really done that. I knew she was in there all the way through my 30s and even my 20s. But I hadn't done anything to try to get in touch with my inner person of who I was so long ago until 4 years ago. And I actually sat there and I could picture myself holding her and hugging her because she was raging. She was just raging, and she had been raging for so many years. And I learned how to, self-nurture and self-soothe and be good to myself and sort of reparent myself, to become that parent that I needed, the loving parent, the parent that cares, the parent that loves me unconditionally, the parent that would never, ever hurt me on purpose or intentionally, ever. I had to kind of become, exactly what I did. I became that parent, and the one that I needed so badly. And so that kind of helped to push a lot of that rage out, because I was no longer raging, because I had given myself the ability to learn to love myself, and learn how to take care of myself and nurture myself, because I needed that nurturing. My God, I didn't get that as a child. I didn't get any nurturing. I don't know how a parent could do that, to a child, like, to hurt their child and then just let them sit in their own, blood, or let them sit in their own mess after a beating like that. I don't know how a parent could do that, but that's how twisted my mother was. And my dad too, right? So my mother was my main abuser, but my dad was also physically abusive towards me as well. I just don't know how a parent could do that, and so many people do, right? So many parents and other people who abuse children can do that, right? And I don't know what kind of a person you have to be able to be, to be able to do that to a child, because that's so wrong on every level. It's so sick and twisted and wrong, but people do it, So I don't think I honored my rage, but it'd be interesting to see what he has to say as we go along through here, honoring our rage. I mean, what I did is just allowed myself to love myself, and to love that inner person my inner child who I was so many years ago, to get her some help, which was going to have to come from me, So it's kind of interesting. He says we cannot allow ourselves to be truly intimate with ourselves or anyone else without owning our grief. And he says we cannot clearly reconnect with the light unless we are willing to own and honor our experience of the darkness. We cannot I kind of get what he's saying there, because I mean I know why I was in that dark place. I mean I know exactly why I was there, and so and sometimes it's because I'm not there anymore. Really, I'm still still obviously on my healing journey. I will be probably for the rest of my life, but the thing is I'm not in that dark place that I used to be, and I know that because I look at other people who still are. And it makes me feel bad for them because I'm like, man, I was there. I know what that's like. And, sometimes I think, wow, eventually I might get to the point where, that dark place might seem so far away that I might not even remember what it was like to be there. And I thought, no, probably not, because, I spent a long time there. So I don't know how I could ever forget that. But, it's kind of interesting about what he says about owning and honoring our experiences, like with our owning all the different parts of ourselves. And I'm still having a bit of problem with understanding that. Like this, to me, doesn't make any sense. Like I said this before, probably 2 months ago. But the thing is I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it. I'm trying to understand what he's saying, and eventually I'll come to the truth of what he's saying. But it's taking me a little bit of time because I don't want to own this stuff. And it very well could be that I don't want to own it, I don't want to own that I was sexually abused as a child. I don't want to own that. That's why I have a real hard time getting over that, because I'm like that, that why should I have to own that? That was a sick and twisted thing to do, and it never should have happened to me, never should happen to any child, but my inner child is screaming out saying, look what happened to me. Look what he did to me. And then, the garbage and abuse that my parents put on me, I kind of related that to being on a necklace around my neck, the abuse and just the whole thing, all of it on a necklace around my neck. And it was so heavy. It was a burden to carry because I was wandering around with this necklace that they gave me. My abusers gave me this necklace and they put it on, and it was on there and it was heavy. And I thought, why am I carrying this around, man? My God, it certainly didn't belong to me. All that garbage, That's how I looked at it, because when I took that necklace off and I threw it away in my imaginary mind, I just pictured myself taking this necklace off and ripping it off and throwing it away and never to come back, gone. And that was one way for me to allow myself to feel better. And it did help me to feel better, right? Because I didn't want to own all that garbage. I was like, that did not belong to me. That abuse, that garbage, that was them, and they put that on me. But there's so many people talking about owning all this stuff, and I'm still having a real hard time with that, But not all of us are gonna, not all of us are gonna agree with all of this stuff, right? Some of it will make sense to us, and some of it won't. And so I think as we go along, eventually I may understand it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping anyway. So he says we cannot fully feel the joy unless we are willing to feel the sadness. And he says we need to do our emotional healing to heal our wounded souls, in order to reconnect with our souls on the highest vibrational levels, and in order to reconnect with the God force that is love and light, joy and truth, that the way to stop reacting out of our inner children is to release the stored emotional energy from our childhoods by doing the grief work that will heal our wounds. And the only effective long-term way to clear our emotional process, to clear the inner channel to truth which exists in all of us, is to grieve the wounds which we suffered as children. The most important single tool, the tool which is vital to changing behavior patterns and attitudes in this healing transformation, is the grief process, the process of grieving. So that's kind of interesting because that's where, I've been grieving my whole lifetime. Been grieving about a whole lot of things, you know what I mean? And most people would be, right? I mean, we've all had losses. We've all experienced, you know, horrible things in our lifetime. It doesn't even have to be abuse. It could be just, you know, death in the family, a death of a pet, you know. That's a horrible thing for many people that love their pets, you know. Could be somebody hurt us, you know, in a relationship, you know, and we love somebody and they let us down. Many people are grieving all kinds of stuff, you know what I mean? And it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that somebody who's grieving was abused. People that even had great childhoods still grieve. We all understand what it is. You know, and I suppose that's a huge part of this process, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what I'm working on. I've been grieving my whole life, but maybe not grieving about what you know, grieving about certain things in order to get through them or move past them, and especially what this whole issue of being abused. I may not have properly grieved that. I don't know. I've been, you know, because I don't know. I think as a child, you know, we were not allowed to show any feelings about how we felt about being abused. You know, none of us in our family were. Like my mother, my mom and dad were brought up on charges, and they were brought up on child abuse charges. They had to go to court, and they were dragged into court, and they were threatened that, you know, if they didn't, we were going to be removed from the home. In other words, all of us, me and my 5 siblings that were still left in the home, and the court said, well, my mom pleaded with them, you know, please don't take my children, you know, they're all I have, you know, and it's their father that's doing this to them, right? Well, you know, the courts found out differently, because my older siblings that were quite a bit older than me told and narked on my mother too, because she was one of our abusers as well. So they said, no, you guys, you know, if the only way we're going to let these children go back into the home is if you guys have counseling, because you need marital counseling, you need anger management courses, you need you know, parent-child courses. You need work, you know, because you're just hurting these kids, you know what I mean? And the courts, my mother was like, please let me keep my children. So she pleaded the courts, begged the courts, and they let us stay. This was back in 1967. And, you know, then after that, after she pleads and begs the judge to let us stay in the home, you know, then of course the social workers come around for a couple of years, so things are looking pretty good for a couple of years, you know, because they're checking to make sure we're not being physically abused, because that's what my parents were brought up on charges of physical abuse, you know, psychological abuse and everything else. And so, you know, the social workers, while they were coming around, things were looking pretty half decent, you know, and then by the time I was 4 and a half, the social workers were gone, and the abuse just started right back up. You know, and it was just full on. It was just like my parents were just probably couldn't wait, you know, till the social workers left, and they were, because they started their garbage right up again, and we moved and left the country, so we were out of the system and out of everything. You know, we were up in Canada, and then when we moved back to not to the same area, not to the same place anyway. So my parents were allowed to continue to get away with that. You know what I mean? And they did get away with it. But the 1960s, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of great stuff being done yet to stop child abuse, right? I think we would have been removed from the home, or there would have been much stricter rules, because my parents went to 2 counseling sessions. And I mean, I got this from my older siblings. All of my older siblings had you know, collaborated all of this information to me, because I was so little, right? And my parents, they went to 2 counseling sessions, and the family went to 2 counseling sessions, because they had to go to separate counseling as well, everybody. And so they went to 2 sessions, and that was it. Like what? They're going to be able to do a whole lot in 2 sessions? I don't think so. Both my parents were abused as children and were psychologically screwed. At the time that they were busted, they had to do these psych tests, and my mom was diagnosed manic depressive, and my dad was diagnosed borderline schizophrenic. So, you know, borderline personality issues and whatnot. So, and they were abused as children, so they were a mess. And, you know, it's very, very unfortunate. But we were not allowed to grieve. We were not allowed to feel anything. We had to take our garbage, our beatings and our abuse, and just put up with it and be happy with it. If I didn't have a smile on my face, you know, I was in trouble, right? That's how bad it was. My mother was like, you put a smile on your face, and you're going to put a smile on your face, you're going to keep a smile on your face, and if you don't, I'm going to kick your ass, you know, and that's how it went for me. So even if I was being beaten, you know, and after I was laying on the floor, you know, crying the blues, she'd be like, you put a smile on your face right now, or I'll beat you again. And she would. And so I had to stop crying, pull myself together, and smile. I love you, mommy. You want to talk about damaging and, completely twisted. And we were not allowed to feel anything about what was happening to us. After my brother had sexually abused me and sexually assaulted me, I went to my mother because I was in pain. And that was taking a big risk because she was always she was my abuser, right? So my main abuser. So I knew that by going to her and telling her this, that I could be in some serious trouble, because I figured, well, shit, she loves her sons a little bit more than she loves me, so she could kill me, or she could beat me seriously, for telling her something like this. But I was in such pain, and I wanted her to know what was going on. So I told her, I said, I told her what was happening. I said, I'm in pain, and brother is doing things to me. And so I just told her what was going on. I was 8 years old, and she told me, she says, that's your problem, not mine. You deal with it, right? And I was not, I was like, yeah, but what am I supposed to do, And she's like, wrap yourself up like a mummy, when you go to bed at night. That was her answer to the whole thing, So I was not allowed to express anything, you know what I mean? It's like we were just had to put up with what we had to put up with. And if you were, all of my siblings were very damaged. 2 of my siblings committed suicide. One of my siblings used to drive around with a gun threatening to kill herself. One of my sisters actually takes long drives and tries to contemplate suicide. All of us contemplate suicide. We all do. And that's really sad. That's so twisted. But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we were not, the whole time we were living under our parents' thumb and living in that home, we were not allowed to feel anything. So then as adults, it's like, oh my God, a wide range of emotions, or, you get older, you start becoming a teen, and the rage within me, it was pretty harsh. It was pretty harsh to have to deal with that, and it just kept going and going, into my 30s, and about the age of 41 is when I started my healing journey. And I thought, man, if I let that rage out, those are all those pent up emotions and stuff that I needed to be able to feel. And, if I let that out, will I ever be able to come back from that? I don't know, So it was a pretty harsh situation. And it was, I decided to do it in a much more casual way and learn how to love myself, instead of just, letting all that out all at once. Pretty harsh that people have to go through this stuff. And I know there's so many of us out here. And, nobody should ever have be treated that way. But that's pretty sad. There are a lot of children who are treated that way. So Robert Burney says, we are all carrying around repressed pain, terror, shame, and rage energy for our childhoods. Whether it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago, we have this grief energy within us even if we came from a relatively healthy family, because this society is emotionally dishonest and dysfunctional. And it says, in order to do the inner child work, we need to be willing to do the grief work. Emotions are energy, and that energy needs to be released through crying and rage. And I did, a lot of crying in my 30s especially, mainly because I detailed all this in my book, A Life of Death and Redemption, but my mother passed away. So I went to the funeral, had left, moved away to another country at the age of 29, and, got a call that she was really not doing well, and I better get down there, so I did, and she passed away that night. Well, she actually went into a coma and then passed away. But she was gone, really, that night. So I got to see her for an hour. And, we couldn't, you can't, there was no way, she would never have reconciled with me anyway, you know what I mean? Because she would take no responsibility for what she did to me, ever, you know what I mean? So it's not like I was ever going to get anything from her while she was on the earth. But when she died, it was a real solid, it was knowledge that, for sure, I was never ever going to hear what I needed to hear from her lips, which was, I love you, daughter. I wanted you, daughter. I'm sorry I hurt you. I was never ever going to hear that. I was never going to hear what I needed to hear. And even with her on the planet, I would have never heard it. She never ever apologized to me once for what she had done to me, and or to any of the children, right, or to anybody, right? She was a horrible woman. And so, but that was just it just closed the door for me on that stuff, and I realized I cried and I cried and I cried for like a year almost, because I not work, I'd go to work and then I'd come home and I'd be miserable. But it's pretty harsh what this stuff does to people. So we'll pick back up here tomorrow and That same time, same place, 6 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we'll just take another look at the rest of this. We're not even halfway through the page here. I mean, it just goes on and on. But this is what I'm interested in looking at, the grief process. So thanks very much for being here. I have a lot of people here this morning, a lot of guests, and I appreciate you taking the time to tune in and to spend part of your day with me and on my healing journey. I appreciate it. And if I can get you any information or you need any further information, stuff that I might have that I find useful for adult survivor issues and whatnot, let me know. You can leave me a message here on Blog Talk Radio, or you can contact me on Facebook, Twitter. I'm just about everywhere. And have a good day, everybody. And if you can't cope, man, you make sure you call a crisis line, right? Like, you do not ever give up. My 2 brothers gave up. They just killed themselves. That just makes me so mad. You know what I mean? They let my parents win. Like, that's what pisses me off about that. You know, I mean, they're out of their pain, they're out of their misery, but they let my parents win this fight. You know, my parents who treated them so horribly and abused them so badly, and treated them like garbage, like shit, like nothing. Right? That's how my parents treated all of us. And they let my parents win because they killed themselves. That makes me so mad. People would say, how's that? Well, because my parents wanted to destroy us, and they really did try. I mean, they did a great job. They wanted to kill us. They wanted us dead, right? They used to tell us, we hate you. You should all be dead. You know, they were so bad. They were evil. You know what I mean? Evil to the core. And so, you know, they had friends, believe it or not, lots of friends. You know, who knew how we were being treated, and they got away with it. And the issue, and even the courts. I mean, the courts knew that they were psychologically twisted and screwed, right? They got away with it anyway. So, my parents got away with killing my brothers, as far as I'm concerned. My brothers made the choice to take their own lives, but the destruction and the damage is what caused them to do that. And so I said, man, there's no way I'm letting my abusers win. There is no way. I'm winning this fight. The only way, and how? I'm going to have a good life, and it's going to be a slap in their face. And we want to talk about retribution. They wanted to see me gone. They wanted to annihilate me. They tried to annihilate my body, and they did annihilate my mind and my soul and my spirit. But they tried to annihilate my body too. And, you know, by me sticking around and having a good life and finding joy and peace and happiness and being able to sit back at the end of the day and say, I love myself, I really do. And I love other people too. I have love in my heart. You did not destroy me. It's such a burn on them. You know what I mean? And not only that, but for me, it's a victorious thing. I won. I won this fight. I won this fight. I couldn't win it as a child, man. I tell you, there's no way I could win this fight as a child. You know, being treated the way that I was and abused so badly. But you know, now I win this fight now. You know what I mean? And this is my win, my victory. And I want you guys to feel the same way. I want you to stick around, get help where you can, find that help, whatever works for you. You know what I mean? And make sure that you stick around. So if you have to call the crisis line, you do. You make sure that you get some help if you can't cope and you're having a hard time, right? So many times there's nobody to talk to, and so many times people just don't know what to say. You know. And so if you have a hard time, you call a crisis line, right? So have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.